Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am your host, Brett Rock, Business Development and Product Specialist here. Thanks for joining us for this month's Cyber Showcase. A day earlier than usual. We usually do these middle of the week. I'm going to be traveling for a conference the rest of this week, so I had to knock it out a bit earlier, but very excited to talk about this with you today. Our focus is going to be on commercial customer risk. We've been doing a lot of stuff on NIST and CRI in the past month or month and a half now. I thought I would give you guys a bit of a break and myself a bit of a break, but we will certainly have some things coming up here to talk about those pieces as well. But again, focusing on a little bit on commercial customer risk, why it's important, what we can do to assess it, how we can address it, those sorts of things as well. And I'm very excited to have one of my teammates here who has never been on a Cyber Showcase before, so a newcomer to the space here. But I'm sure you've heard him in some SBS Institute webinars and things like that. He's one of our IS consulting team lead, Shane Daniel. Shane, why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Brett. Shane Daniel here. I've been with SBS for going on 8 years. Worked in banking and bank consulting and CPA firms that specialize with banks for almost 30 years. So we started talking about this, and all these memories of commercial losses and such have started flooding my memory. So be glad to share those experiences with you, Brett.
Yeah, I'm sure that was all good memories, it sounds like. So we'll have some fun talking about this. There is a particular thing that spurred my interest in this topic this month, so I promise I'll get to that in a minute. First of all, from an agenda perspective, although you can see some flattering photos of Shane and I there on the left-hand side, as well as our contact information. As always, if you have any questions or want to pick our brain on anything we talk about today, want to get copies of this slide deck or recording or anything like that, please feel free to reach out to either of us. We'll be happy to help. From an agenda perspective, we're going to start with introductions and the agenda itself. We're working through that now. We're going to talk a little bit about what's here from SBS. We've got 2 new modules of track. I promised I wouldn't talk too much about NIST or CRI, but I'm going to briefly highlight those. We're going to jump into what's coming from SBS from a couple of webinars perspective. And then we are going to get into the main point of topic for today's conversation, understanding commercial customer risk, why it's important, how to measure it, how to address it. And then we are going to dive into track itself to take a look at our CA track module. Now it speaks to the lack of influence I've had on this company in my 10 years here that I have not gotten the title of that module changed yet. People look at CA track and they think it is the CAT. It is not. It is a commercial account takeover risk assessment module. So we're going to dig through that a little bit, walk you through what it looks like, how it works, what the goal is, stuff like that. We'll wrap up with some takeaways, and if we have some time, we'll do some Q&A. As always, just a couple of quick asks on your side. If you have any questions, go ahead and use either the chat or the question and answer box that Zoom does provide. If we don't get to those today, I'll be happy to follow up with you directly. So please don't think we are ignoring you. We will get to you. And then if you don't mind taking a quick survey at the end here when we are done, that does help us make sure this continues to get better and then see if there's anything we can help you with as well. So appreciate you taking a quick look at that. So getting into things really quickly, a lot of you are probably familiar with this slide, but let me just go through it real quick. For anybody who is not familiar with SBS cybersecurity, this is your first Cyber Showcase or webinar with us. I find that hard to believe, but if it is, we really appreciate you taking some time. For anybody who is familiar with us, obviously, we're very grateful for the partnership we have with you. We have been in the industry for over 20 years now. We have all kinds of people using our track tool that we're about to talk about later on today. We have all kinds of great educational offerings that we encourage you to look at on our website at www.sbscyber.com. So what's here from SBS? Again, I promise not to belabor this too much, but we do have 2 brand new modules of the track tool that are out. The NIST CSF risk assessment module that was released about probably a month and a half ago now. We have a free version of that module that you can sign up for by going to our website and clicking on the products dropdown. We also have a premium version of that module that does add some cool bells and whistles, including the ability for you to set target levels in track and have the tool monitor your progress toward those goals. So we are really excited about that NIST CSF module. We also released about a week and a half ago our CRI profile module. So those are the 2 different options that we are recommending to replace the CAT tool for those of you who are looking to do that by August 31st of this year. NIST is a great tool for anybody. It's the broadest and most widely recognized framework in the world. It's the basis for a number of frameworks that we're going to talk about today, probably, including CRI profile. But if you are a financial institution, which I imagine with this topic, most of you probably are, the CRI profile is built specifically for financial institutions. So I would encourage you to consider that option as well. Furthermore, we are running a really nice pricing incentive. If you do sign up for NIST Premium or the CRI profile by July 31st this year, there is a price break that we are providing. So would be happy to talk to you about any of those modules, about the pricing, anything else, feel free to reach out. A couple other things that are coming from SBS. Later this month, we do have Laura Zanucci from our team talking about vendor risk management, best practices for 2025. Obviously, every business today is reliable, incredibly reliable on vendors to run day-to-day operations, probably none more so than the financial services space. Laura's going to talk about how to build a modern vendor management program, how to do risk assessments, how to do vendor selection and ongoing management, talk about fourth-party management. That's come up a bunch recently. And then even talking about AI vendor management. So lots of good stuff in that webinar. I encourage you to take a look at that. We have our Hacker Hour coming up at the end of this month on June 25th. Nick Podorodsky on our team, our Hacker Hour host extraordinaire, will be having Terry Cooksauce from our team on there to talk about the CRI profile. So if you're not tired of hearing about that yet, Nick will be covering that during the Hacker Hour. And then finally, one other webinar that we do have coming up that I'm actually really excited about. Two of our team members, Ashley Williams, who's kind of our internal champion for AI, and Linda Hardup, one of our consultants who's working on some AI stuff for us as well, is going to be doing they are going to be doing an institute webinar on leveraging Copilot for financial institutions. So if you're using Copilot or thinking about Copilot, they're going to talk about, kind of the evolving AI landscape, where it started, where it is today, where it's going, key considerations from governance and risk management perspective, and then talking about some of the different capabilities Microsoft Copilot has. So another really exciting webinar that will be next month from our institute. All right, with that said, let's jump into the main point of topic for today, which is commercial customer risk. And I mentioned earlier, there was one thing that really piqued my interest with this recently. So I was reading the Verizon data breach report that I'm sure everybody's familiar with. If you're not, it's a fantastic report that outlines a lot of great statistical information. And there was a paragraph in there that really kind of got me thinking about this topic for this showcase. And it said, and I quote, "Ransomware forced a movement away from the question of what price can I get for my victim's data on the open market to instead, what is my victim willing to pay to maintain access to their own data? This new approach to the monetization of data was typically simpler, easier, and more effective for the criminal, and it further contributed to the widening of potential targets because the methods employed are similar regardless of victim size." And I think that's a really, kind of boil that down a little bit. What they're saying there is pretty simple, right? Going from the idea of I need to get as much data as I possibly can get my hands on to put it on the black market and try to sell it. So I'm targeting larger organizations, institutions that have a ton of data to, hey, all I really care about is how much this company is willing to pay to get their data back. And in doing so, that shift in mindset really meant we can open up our targets. We don't have to put in a whole lot more effort. All the methods that they employ from a criminality perspective are available, whether you're a large business or a small business. So the pool of potential victims just grew and grew and grew. And I think even further, the survey says in 2013, the first time they looked at it, when they looked at cyber crime at a small business, 1,000 or fewer employees versus large business, 1,000 or more, it was basically the larger businesses were getting hit much, much more frequently. In 2020, when they redid that question, it had flipped around entirely. And now it's about 3 times more likely for a small business to be targeted or to fall victim than a larger business. So again, I think that's really what spurred my interest in this, and hopefully what you're interested in this conversation is. But Shane, I'm going to pull you in really quickly, and we're obviously going to have an open conversation about this, but does that kind of back up what your impression is? You're the expert here. Are you starting to see that shift away, or in the past handful of years, that shift from, hey, we need to target the biggest of the biggest to anybody's fair game?
Yeah, I mean, just listening to what you were saying there, quoting that report. All crime is crime of opportunity, right? And I think with small businesses, and I've never been to a business that said, "Oh, we're so big that no one's going to hack us or attack us," right? But there is a common theme that a lot of small business owners think that, "Oh, well, who cares about me? I'm a small business. I'm on the town square. Who's going to really attack me? I'm too small to be a target." And I think these studies are showing that anyone can be a target. Anyone with an IP address, anyone that's using email can be a target. And once they identify that a vulnerability or a weakness, or they get an employee to click on a phishing email, they don't care if you're multi-million dollar industry or just a mom and pop shop. They see a victim, they see an opportunity. Small businesses, the challenge there is maybe they haven't invested in security awareness training or the latest firewall technologies, and aren't making those investments because they have this false sense of security that I'm too small to be affected by cybercrime. That's the big guys. They should be worried about that, not me.
Yeah, it's kind of low hanging fruit, right? In any
Right.
walk of life, it's what is my easiest, in some ways, what is my easiest avenue of achieving what do I want to achieve? And if I'm, can go after a bunch of smaller businesses that aren't prepared, um, my likelihood of being successful, if I'm getting the same information and the same, all I really care about is what are you willing to pay to get it back? There's, that's to your point, a real crime of opportunity, and it's kind of that low hanging fruit, right?
Yeah, even small businesses, they may not have invested in cyber insurance. So if I'm the criminal, I'm like, I don't have to worry about cyber insurance. This is a small business. I don't have to deal with those guys. I can deal directly with the owner who's really wanting to get their information back. So that's another opportunity. There is cut to the chase and make the deal and get my stolen funds.
Yeah, and so a couple other statistics that jumped out at me. These weren't necessarily from that survey, but from other surveys I've been reading, that nearly 43% of all cyber attacks in America are on small businesses. So that shows you right there that they are targets. But only 14% of all small businesses say they are prepared to face a cyber attack or an attack of some sort. So again, I think that speaks to exactly what you're talking about. They don't have necessarily the technology in place. They don't have the training necessarily. And again, this is obviously speaking in generalities. I'm sure there are some small businesses that are fantastic at cybersecurity, but for the most part, if we're talking only 14% say they're ready to go, it does seem like that's a relatively fertile area for bad guys to target.
Yeah, I know the U.S. Chamber of Commerce had a stat from years ago that said, a small business that goes under a cyber attack likely will face bankruptcy within a year of that attack. So,
Yeah.
it does destroy businesses and livelihoods.
So jumping into it a little bit, let's start talking about why they're important. I'm pretty sure everybody's familiar with why commercial customers are important, but let's dig into it a little bit more. Larger deposits and balances is a big piece of this, as opposed to individual customers. A lot of loan opportunities there, fee income. You've got cross-selling potential. Generally, there's sticky relationships, especially for smaller community banks. Community development opportunities. It allows you to build brand reputation in your community. It gives you revenue diversification and then financial stability. So obviously there are a lot of really good reasons to be working with commercial customers. And about 96% of all small businesses have accounts at a financial institution, and they account for about 40 to 60% of a financial institution's total loan portfolio on average. So again, these are customers of yours that are really, in a lot of ways, I imagine, important. And even though that they may be facing these challenges on their side, I think getting to the next slide here, why is that commercial customer risk so important? The things that they're facing, the threats that they're facing, and any failings that they may have, again, there's always going to be some impact on the financial institution, whether it's a relationship impact, or reputational, financial. There's all kinds of those out there. So, Shane, we talked a little bit about what makes small businesses good targets for cybercrime, but what are you seeing from your perspective about how those risks to a commercial customer can impact the financial institution itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think banks need to realize that when they open up a commercial account, whether that be a LLC, a corporation, a municipality, a pseudo government entity, each one of those require different legal documents to sign. So really, from the beginning, you're managing the risk of that client. And then we add on the convenience of mobile banking, RDC, ACH, wire transfer. That just adds another layer of complexity. And then also, you may be doing some treasury management. You may be doing factoring with these clients. And, a lot of our clients are in small communities. And their biggest commercial account may actually be the city that they're in. And every day you open up the paper or read an article about a municipality or school district or something like that has been compromised either through ransomware or fraudulent transfer of funds. We think what are some of the biggest threats to small business or commercial accounts is really the insider. And we hear this term insider, we think, oh, well, fraud or misappropriation of funds, but it could be just a common mistake of clicking on the wrong email or clicking on the wrong attachment and allowing someone in. So the total exposure, reputation wise, is huge in a small community. But then dollar wise, if you're going to get sued, a suit from a commercial account is going to be larger dollars. They may have the resources to hire really good attorneys, and they may have the tenacity to pursue this because the perception is the bank made the mistake. I didn't authorize that transaction. And then, that spreading around the town can be devastating to the banking. So really, I think it's important for the banks to get ahead of it when they're opening the accounts and explaining the risk of these services. While they're convenient, there's also a risk, and having those conversations on the front end is really key.
So I think one of the big things to just kind of think about or kind of wrap our minds around is the commercial customer risk is our risk at the end of the day, right? I mean, whether it's we did something as a financial institution wrong or not, you kind of mentioned this a second ago, Shane. In a lot of cases, that blowback comes to us at the end of the day anyway. It becomes, hey, I may have done X or Y, but you guys were the ones that wound up approving it. Or wound up letting the funds get out the door. And it's easier to blame somebody else for a mistake than it is to take responsibility, especially if it's as sizable a mistake as some of these can be. So just kind of wrapping your head around the idea that, just because, we work with the dry cleaner down the street and they don't use any, they use the public library computer to do their, online banking. That is a risk to you guys at the end of the day as well, a risk to financial institutions. So we need to identify that risk, whether or not it's us in particular, it is something that we're going to have to take on eventually. And then we've talked about how the opportunity for cyber criminals is really shifting downstream a lot and being able to say, okay, well, financial institutions are relatively secure. I mean, we're a testing company, right? We can come in and try to brute force our way in, and we can try to do different tests and things like that. But because of all the technology and training and education that you provide your employees, and even the things like regulations and examinations and audits that aren't necessarily fun but are important because they protect us, those are things that make you guys really financial institutions really difficult to get into. Now, can we trick somebody occasionally or I guess frequently to let us in the door sometimes? Absolutely. But for the most part, you guys are pretty secure. But again, we talk about the dry cleaner down the street or the law office or the convenience store. They don't have that technology, right? They don't have that training. They don't have that mentality. So Shane, I don't know if that's something that I imagine that's something that financial institutions are getting better and better about understanding. But any examples or any experience in kind of helping people understand that piece of it?
Yeah, I mean, pre-COVID, a lot of clients would have seminars where they would invite commercial customers to come in and talk to a cyber expert or have some discussions there around that. And we kind of lost that after COVID or post-COVID. But really having questionnaires that you send to your clients and asking them these security prime questions of are you destroying the checks as part of RDC? Do you have the latest antivirus software loaded on your workstations? Those things to to gauge the risk, and if if you identify gaps or opportunities, then I would have a resource that they could go to and get more help or have a discussion on what are the best ways for them to secure their enterprise
Yeah.
uh, from a cybersecurity standpoint. But yeah, I mean, I remember the days of going on site and reviewing commercial accounts. But yeah, the risk is of exposure. Not only on the deposit side, but on the credit side and everything is really we need to spend. We need to be bankers need to be almost advisors to these commercial accounts and make them aware of the risk. And when they accept the risk, we need to get them to document that we've advised them that we're opening RDC services for them, and they don't want to use strong passwords. Have them accept that risk, because if it comes back to bite them, then we have a recourse there where we can say yes. We advise on several different opportunities that this commercial account take these cybersecurity measures, and they refuse to, based off their size and complexity, and did not adopt commercially reasonable security methods.
So I thought we'd just take a second here to talk about some of the most common threats that commercial customers face. A lot of these will be very similar to what financial institutions themselves face. But Shane, I don't know if there's any in here in particular that you see as a really significant threat to a commercial customer. There's a couple on here that I've always kind of got my eye on, but I'll open the floor to you to see if there's anything specifically that you see as a really important threat to consider.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest or one of the first commercial threats I saw was actually the bank I was working with started off with had an insurance policy around wire transfer. Part of that insurance coverage required the bank to record the wire transfer conversations. And as a green employee at the bank, I pushed for that. Finally, got the bank to agree to start recording wire transfer requests. One of the first customers that actually signed up for it was a local air conditioning maintenance facility. And about 3 months later, the accountant called and transferred money to her own account. And that set off some red flags. We brought their owner in and got him on the phone, recorded that conversation with him, and then about 6 months after that, the owner's spouse calls and wants to know why this money is being transferred to the accountant, and we were able to rely back on that conversation and present that to it. So wire transfer fraud, even in the old school of an insider threat, is a big risk because the wire transfer money is gone, and it's almost impossible to get back, especially if it goes international. And then, of course, ACH fraud and through phishing is a big risk. So those are the two large dollar one shot episodes that could really affect the bank financially and reputational wise with wire transfer and ACH fraud.
Yeah, I was thinking ACH in particular, but then the business email compromise piece of this. I mean, and these kind of all flow together to some degree, but that is something I've seen that the numbers are ticking up every single year. There's more and more of these attacks, that sort of thing. And then I put at the bottom there, don't know what they don't know. And I think that's just a really critical component here, is that, again, as people that deal in this industry a lot and deal with a lot of regulation and having to have technology and having to have training and education and all this stuff, we know what's going on, and we're aware of these things, and we may be able to spot a phishing email much easier than somebody that isn't going through this on a regular basis. So I think that phishing piece is just so dangerous, because phishing emails are becoming so difficult to figure out, even for people who know what they're looking for, that it can be even more challenging, obviously, for people that aren't being tested and trained on it on a regular basis. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. Hold on a second. I just got a chat sent to you.
So that, and then certainly with the AI stuff, Got a call from somebody saying the Cyber Showcase isn't working as intended. So hopefully that's not the case. Let me pull my screen down really quickly. Sharing content. I'm sorry. I thought I was. Maybe we were just looking at everybody else.
I thought it was just me, Brett.
Oh, you just sort of looking at yourself. Well, I was sharing content. I apologize. You guys would think that I know how to do this by now. I've done enough of these, but got too excited and started without it. The good news here is I wasn't sharing a lot of content. We were mainly having conversations, but I will be happy to share the deck with this with anybody who needs to see it. And my apologies sincerely for that error there. Okay, so let's talk about how we can measure commercial risk. So now that we understand that it is important, and now that everybody can see my screen, let's talk a little bit, Shane, about how we can measure commercial risk, commercial customer risk. Now, we are going to go through our CA Track modular track, as I mentioned earlier. That's our tool that we have to help you perform risk assessments on commercial customers. But what are some practical ways, outside of that tool, Shane, that you've seen financial institutions be able to measure the risk of their commercial customers?
So, you gave me some C questions about this, and I thought about this a lot, Brett. I'm old school, so I go back and think, okay, there's a risk. We've identified that there's a risk with commercial accounts, but there's also a reward, right? So, yes, inherently, commercial accounts are going to be more risky for a bank, especially a commercial bank. And back in the day, credit unions and thrifts did not deal with commercial accounts because they were too risky. They didn't have the technology or the core banking systems to process that volume of transactions. That's kind of changed now. It's been a blending of banking, but where there's risk, there's also reward, because commercial accounts are also one of the largest fee income producing, non-interest income producing parts of banking service fees. So I would encourage every bank to have commercial accounts on analysis, right? Looking at the activity, how many wire transfers they do, how many ACH transactions they're processing. Most people that have been doing commercial banking practice for a while have that already integrated. So if you can measure how much to charge a client, we can also back into how much risk are we assuming. So, I mean, how many SARs are we filling out? How many BSA reports, CPRs, those things? Commercial accounts, there's risk all across the enterprise with this. So great reward. I would be using those calculations that you use to calculate their fees to also be using to calculate the risk. Does this customer have RDC? How many RDC transactions are they conducting? How many accounts are they doing online? How many inquiries do we have online? How many employees do they have set up to do funds transfer? These are different things that we can look at and measure and determine what our overall exposure or our overall inherent risk is with these clients. So I would use that information that you've already using to charge the client to also be using to measure the risk of the client.
And then you can talk about some of the ways to kind of, obviously this isn't as simple as a control, right? We have a physical control that we have on this asset or something like that. So in this case, you're almost having to perform interviews or have some sort of assessments that are going out to understand what the customer's doing from a risk perspective. One of the things when I do talk about CA Track in a demo, I always talk about is if I had two commercial customers, right? And one was a multi-million-dollar customer that we lent a lot of money to, and they had a lot of services from us. And then the other one was a mom and pop shop somewhere, and we didn't give them a lot of services. I might immediately look at that and automatically think, well, the first one's the risky one. That's the one I have to worry about. But what if they have a ton of technology in place? And what if they do a great job training their employees and all those sorts of things versus the other one that's, again, going to the public library to do their online banking? I mean, obviously, understanding that inherent risk score is just a part of it. We have to figure out what they're doing as well, right?
Yes, and then we need to analyze and have these conversations with them. As how do you train your employees? We're giving 5 employees access to your bank account online. Have they been trained? Are they all sharing the same user workstation and the same password? Try to delve into that. What's the security posture of this client? And then, here's the opportunity to educate the client of, okay, maybe it's not good for these for all your employees to share the password. If you lost money, where would you start to find out who the culprit was? So that's one of the challenges. Is it's a small business. You may not have segregation of duties and in place. You may be relying on third parties who bring in additional exposure. So part of that, when you're opening that account, is trying to assess, what is their cybersecurity posture, where would you rate it, and then I would, have a rating scale for that, and then do your risk using your risk assessment tools, try to identify ways to mitigate that risk and reduce the exposure for your bank.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of touched on one of my next questions here. Do you see a lot, and obviously you're in the field a lot more than I am, do you see a lot of financial institutions starting to consider that cybersecurity risk as they're doing their normal financial due diligence on a commercial customer? Is that something that institutions are starting to consider up front?
I believe so. I mean, especially, if I'm bidding on the local county or the local city's accounts, that goes out for bidding every, 3 to 4 years, and banks will compete and bid for that. I would consider, what is the history? Have they had a loss? Have they had a declaration for a cyber event? Are they dependent on one IT person? Especially if you're not a small town, you're going to know these things. Chances are someone at your bank is pretty tight with the local community and local government. But determining, okay, what is the exposure? Are they aggressive and proactive in their cybersecurity posture, or is it kind of laxed? Do they have they invested in the infrastructure and looking forward? And you have to consider that in your pricing, because if you have a lax cybersecurity posture, then that is potential exposure for the bank. And I would include that in the pricing of the services. We like anything in banking, if we have a loan and there's a high risk of default on that loan, we're going to charge a higher interest rate. So that's kind of the part of pricing and risk. If we see higher risk with the municipality, it may be better that we pass on it or another bank gets it, because they have lackluster controls. They don't have segregation of duties, and they're just going to introduce more risk to our bank. And it's better for us to focus on another commercial account besides accepting that one with higher risk.
So one thing you and I have talked probably ad nauseum about in the last couple of months, again, I hesitate to even bring it up, but the idea of self-assessments is obviously an important part of this as well. And if I'm a commercial customer of a financial institution that's on this call, and as a financial institution, I want them to, I want to be that trusted advisor. I want to help them out, and I want to provide some sort of self-assessment they can perform. Out of the frameworks that we've talked about a lot recently, what are some of those that, again, a commercial customer might feel good about being able to go through, understand that it's kind of industry agnostic, it's built for everybody, that sort of thing?
Yeah, there's not really a federal law that says this is how you operate a commercial account and open in a financial institution. There is Phil 50-2011. Goes all the way back to 2011. You do have the Conference of State Bank Supervisors offer some guidance around Cato. You do have NACHA out there who advises on ACHs. And the FFIEC, Authentication and Access to Financial Institution Services and Systems, from August of 2021. All of those are really NIST-based solutions. Everything kind of goes back to the National Institute of Technology Standards, right? So looking at that, becoming familiar with the NIST hardening standards, and then I'm not a lawyer, But if you're opening commercial accounts, you're offering wire transfer, you're offering ACH, you really need to look at the UCC codes in your state, how they were adopted by your state or the other jurisdictions that you're working in. Looking at Article 4A of the UCC that deals with wire transfers. And then one of the test case legal cases that you really need to become familiar with is the choice escrow and land title versus Bancorp South. This is from 2014. And this is really the precedent setting case that really tested UCC 4A. UCC 4A really deals around articles of agreements and commercially reasonable security standards. So that's really the threshold that any bank is going to be measured against is have you required this customer to implement commercially reasonable security standards. But all that's really based off NIST is really the founding bedrock of all this guidance and case law.
So we did just release that NIST CSF assessment. There is a free version of that. Would you encourage, if you were working with a commercial client, not necessarily a financial institution, but somebody, we obviously work with insurance companies and other non-financial institutions. Is that an assessment that you would find valuable to them to be able to complete and give them an understanding of how effective they're doing from a cybersecurity perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it may be a challenge to go through. You may have to help clients walk through that. But if you say no, that's okay, right? If it doesn't apply, that's okay. But to going through and going, okay, why do we say no? Why do we say yes to this? Is a good exercise. And there may be a gaps that you identify and go, well, maybe we have compensating or mitigating other mitigating controls that reduce the risk, or maybe this is truly a gap that we've identified, and we need to make an investment if we identify that the risk is too high for us to accept or to outsource via insurance.
Mm-hmm. So that kind of also flows into the next piece I wanted to talk about is how we can address it. And there's, again, not a lot of different ways you can address it. Financial institutions, as you mentioned, Shane, have been doing education and training for their commercial customers and customers as a whole for a long time. But I thought we'd stop here and talk about it real quick before we jump into the module itself. But do you have any best practices for providing education to commercial customers, maybe in terms of how to come up with topics or, kind of going beyond the standard statement stuffers and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a big fan of lunch and learns. I think clients like the opportunity to come in and talk to their banker. They can talk not only cybersecurity but other issues, and really, I think that helps also with your CRA, where you're participating with the community. So you're really kind of killing two birds with one stone, meeting some CRA points, and then also addressing some real risk with your clients. There could be opportunities to speak with schools. I mean, we might as well start them young, right? And come in and present. What is banking is always a good topic at that age, 8th grade or whatever. It's the importance of saving, the importance of good cyber hygiene. How do we explore? So really building, in the community, this trust with the bank. And I think that pays untold dividends in the future by getting active in the community. And I mean, Brett, statement stuffers, does anyone really get statements anymore?
Right. Exactly. Good question. So, I think we did some a webinar on this or a cyber showcase last year leading up into October, which is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And, just trying to find new and creative ways to meet with people and to meet them where they are, right? Not just constantly rely on the same things we've done every single time, but using it as an opportunity to think outside the box and be creative, I think can be a really, I think it's a really interesting opportunity, to your point, to build that brand reputation in the community, but also build that trust with your customers as well. So, I think that's a key component of this too. So with that said, Shane, I'm going to pull up Track, and I know you have been in this CA track module a little bit with some of our customers, but I do want to walk through it and just kind of show some other the folks on the webinar here today, kind of some of the different pieces that this module can do. So our CA track module, as this is starting to pull up here, as I mentioned, is a commercial account risk assessment module. It was built to help you understand what the risk is, both inherent and residual of your commercial customers. So for those of you who are familiar with track, obviously we've got all the modules on the left-hand side of the screen. For anybody who's not familiar, certainly if there's any modules you'd like to learn more about, please let us know. But this module, again, is built to follow a workflow where we look at each of our commercial customers. We identify inherent risk. We use track to help identify inherent risk by reviewing a bunch of different information that we'll talk about. From there, we actually use the track module itself to send out surveys to our commercial customers. Those surveys can be question sets that we provide. We offer a 10-question standard question set as part of this module, as well as an advanced 10-question set. Those are both based off the NIST standards for cybersecurity for small businesses. You also have the ability to create your own campaigns, your own questionnaires as well. So whether you want to focus it on the types of services that are provided or the types of accounts you're looking at, you have a ton of flexibility to be able to survey your customers. And at the end of the day, what we're able to do with this module, and we'll again take a look at it in detail here, is we will use the answers that you get as part of that survey to give you a residual risk score, to give us an idea of this is inherent risk based off of the information you have. This is the residual risk based off of the information they've provided. So that's giving you that risk assessment, right? Without having to go out and interview them, without having to sit down and go through questionnaires and things like that. This is you actually getting that information back, and then track will take it and automatically give you that residual risk score. Further, we actually give every single person that finishes the survey, every commercial customer that finishes the survey rather, gets a white labeled copy of the report that tells them how they scored on the survey, and then gives them a top 10 or top 20 list of steps they may want to take to better protect themselves going forward. So it's kind of a win-win, right? You get some information that you otherwise might not have so that you can better understand how risky your customers are. At the same time, you're providing some information that they can use to better protect themselves, which at the end of the day helps you out as well. And you're acting as that trusted advisor. You're being that person in the community that's there to help them get better as well. So this module is built to help on a variety of levels, but at the end of the day, really helps you understand what the risk looks like, both from an inherent perspective based off of what you know, and a residual risk perspective based off of what you're being told. So just kind of the way it works quickly, we won't go through all the nuts and bolts of it, but we do allow you to download a template. So if you want to upload your commercial customers in here rather than enter them one at a time, you are welcome to download that template, fill it out, and then you can upload them back into track. So that will get them in here. But if I were coming in here to add one, I would just click on this plus icon next to commercial accounts, and it's going to bring me to this screen where it asks me for the name of the commercial customer, the industry they're in, so you can tell us what that looks like. We ask for some demographic information. We do allow you to set an owner, which would be internal. So that's where you can come in and say this person or this group of people are responsible for this commercial customer at our organization or institution. The two kind of most important pieces, although some of this is mandatory as well, but we do ask that you make sure to include an account contact name that would be at the organization itself. So at the commercial customer, we need to know one contact we can reach out to, and we need to get their email address as well, because we are going to email this, or you are going to be able to email those surveys, the links to the survey rather, to those commercial customers. So we do need to get a name from them and an email address. You can also add notes to that as well. On the right-hand side is where we start to get the risk profile. So this is the information that we're really going to use to generate that inherent risk score for you. So we would want to know more information about what their monthly online balance typically looks like, any online credit. We do ask that you score them on a scale of 1 to 3 for overall financial risk. 1 to 3 is the scale that we start with or default to in this module, but you are more than welcome to change that scale. If you would rather do 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, completely up to you. You can do that in the setup, but we do default to that, and we ask that you score them, how many employees they have, excuse me, and then which types of services you provide for them. So we're going to use all of this information, the risk profile in particular. We're going to use that information to generate an inherent risk score for every single commercial customer that you have in track. So very similar to like if I were doing an IT risk assessment where I come in and identify the threats and the criticality of the asset and things like that, so that I can generate an inherent risk score for a particular asset. We're doing the same thing, but for a commercial customer. From there, we actually build out campaigns in track. So if I come in here, you have 3 settings for campaigns: draft, active, and completed. A draft campaign is where it starts until it's ready to get going. Active is any campaigns that you have ongoing currently. And then completed campaigns would allow you to go back and look at any previous versions that you've done. So let's go ahead and create one really quickly. I'm going to click on the plus icon next to campaigns, and that's going to bring me to this screen where I've got the details. I'm going to start with naming the campaign, and I'm just going to say test campaign June 2025. And we'll say this is a test. Anything on the left-hand side of the screen that I'm typing on right now will be internal. No external party, no commercial customer will be able to see the campaign or the description. What they will be able to see is the survey name and the survey description, because that will show up on the survey itself. So this is, I'm going to say test campaign here, but you would probably want to make sure that you're naming it something that you're okay with them seeing. This is a test as well. So again, this information, the survey name and the survey description, will show up on the survey itself. We also have the ability to disable a survey, to disable survey decline option. Now, you're welcome to toggle that on and off. It's up to you. But if they want to take the survey, they're going to take it. If they don't, they're not going to. So it's not, at the end of the day, that this decline option is, it's important. It's good to have, but it's not necessarily going to stop anybody who just doesn't want to take the survey. What I will tell you is if they don't take the survey, and we actually have a pretty high hit rate on getting people to do this, especially if you push it and promote it the way we intend for it to be, which is them getting the help they need. But if they don't take it, or they decline to take it, that obviously gives you some information as well. And Shane, I'll open it up to you. If I were to assign this out to a commercial customer and they said, no, thanks, I'm just not doing that, that would probably give me some information about how willing and maybe how effective they're doing protecting themselves if they're not even willing to take a survey, a short survey, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to really evaluate the relationship then and say, okay, maybe you go up and escalate to someone else. Hopefully you have a personal relationship with someone there that you can contact and stress the importance of this. But yeah, that's pretty telling if they refuse to complete a survey.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. So now that's going to create the campaign and it's going to leave it in the draft stage, but you're going to see these 4 options across the top: details, questions, accounts, and then finalize. Details is the information we've already included. You can make tweaks to that if you need to. But when we get to questions, this is where you can build out what the survey is going to look like. Now, again, I mentioned this earlier, but we provide a standard assessment, which is a 10-question survey. We also offer an advanced assessment, which would be an additional 10. So those 2 come out of the box with track. You also have the ability to create your own question sets as well, or survey questions as well. So you can come into the custom question sets area, build out any type of survey you want, and use this module to conduct that survey. It will factor into the risk assessment, so you'll want to keep that in mind. But again, you can build that out where we're saying, okay, we're going to build a question set specific to ACH or specific to remote deposit capture or something like that. You have a ton of flexibility in whatever you might want to build out here. I'm just going to pick the standard assessment. I'm going to say that's the question set we're going to use for this particular campaign. And from there, I'm going to move to accounts. So this is where we're going to select the accounts that would be included. Now, you're welcome to select all. You also can individually select them, or you can search for them. I'm just going to pick a few just so we can have them included here. And from there, I'm going to move to finalize. And this is going to give me an idea of what the campaign is going to look like. The accounts that are included, so these 4 right here. It's going to give me the details for finalization, which means when it starts and when it ends. We're going to move this end date out to the 30th. And then it's going to give me a preview of the campaign itself. So it's going to give me the survey name, the survey description, and then it's going to give me the questions that we're going to ask. Now, in our standard assessment, the questions are everything, kind of things like, do you have a firewall? And the answers are everything from what's a firewall to yes, we do, and we update it regularly. The standard and advanced question set are not difficult. They're not, again, they may have to do some work on their end. They may have to talk to some people. But for the most part, these are pretty reasonable questions to answer. So once we're done, I'm going to click Create Campaign. And because I've set the start date for today, it's automatically going to push it into the active section. And that's where we can begin to process this particular campaign. On the right-hand side, well, in the middle of the screen, let me back up, you'll see the number of pending accounts to take the survey. There are 4. None of them have started. None of them have completed it. Nobody's declined it. There's a total of 4. I can actually click on this little purple download icon. So right now, Track is not going to send out survey links for you. That is something that we are working toward. But in the meantime, what you will be able to do is download a spreadsheet that's going to look like this. And it's going to give you the survey URL on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, it's going to give you the contact email. The important thing to know here is that this email has to match up with the survey URL. It's a one-for-one thing. So if I set this very top survey URL to the person on the bottom, when they try to log in, they wouldn't actually get access to it. So you do want to make sure that you're doing that and lining those up correctly. I'm going to go back in here and paste that survey link. And one more time, grab my email address. So I'll copy and paste that in here. So they would take the link, they would take the survey URL email, and then that would bring them in here to take a look at the survey itself. Now in the upper left-hand corner, you do have the ability to add your logo instead of SBS, so you can white label this. But you're going to get the name of the survey, the description, and then it's going to get into the questions. So my organization uses antivirus and anti-spyware software. And the answers are anything from, I'm not aware of what kind of software we use. We don't use it. We have it on some, we have it on all, or we update and scan with a quality product. So they're going to come in here and they're going to answer these. And again, I'd be happy to share some of the questions with you, but I'm just going to go through and click some of these so we can see what it looks like. So just kind of clicking, bear with me. And when they're done, at the bottom, they'll have the ability to click Complete Survey, and it's going to ask them if they're sure. I'm going to click Complete. So that tells them they're finished. So they went in here, they took the link, they added their email address, they went to the link and completed the survey. Now they'll have the ability to download the report. So I mentioned this earlier. They have this ability to download this white labeled report, which is actually very ugly. We are working on updating that, but it will tell them their name and all that stuff. The first page is going to get into the security assessment report. So it talks about why this is important. The second page is going to get into their grade. So in this case, I scored a 56% out of a possible 100. From there, it's going to get into those recommendations. So my organization applies security patches and updates to software programs was the statement. My response was, we do not patch or upgrade any software. So the recommendation here is automatically install Microsoft updates and regularly manage and schedule the updating of other critical programs on all computers. So again, gives them a top 10, in this case, list of recommendations, very short and easy. And if they wanted to get into even more detail, we do have even more information toward the bottom to talk about individual pieces. So again, they are getting some of that information that they can then use to better protect themselves going forward. And Shane, I don't know off the top of my head, but I know there's a fair amount of guidance that's out there that does deal with us providing education to our customers. And this is a good opportunity to start looking at checking that box, right?
Yeah, that is a common question with examiners. It's, how do you educate your customers around cybersecurity? But I was just thinking, going through this, I didn't realize that the client got this report, Brett. But I think that's definitely a big value add, and certainly filling out this questionnaire is a lot easier than going on site and crawling around and making sure the network wires are hooked up, because the client thinks you're there, and you're also going to help diagnose their computer problems. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So in addition, once they've completed it, we'll go back to the track screen here. You're going to see that now for my test campaign, only 3 are pending. 1's completed. So you can kind of see the progress there. If I go inside, it's going to start by showing me an overview here. And it's going to begin by telling me the campaign name, the description. Conclusions would be like who our top 10 inherent riskiest accounts are, and then that completed the survey, and then my top 10 that declined it. In this case, I don't have anybody that declined it. And I've only got 1 that have completed it so far. We do have two different reports you can pull, a board report and a compliance report. I'm actually going to go ahead and pull the compliance report because those two are identical, except the compliance report does add a few extra pages we'll talk about. But on your side, you'll be able to come in, you'll get your cover page. For those of you who are not familiar with the track cover pages, they do populate with your institution's name, location, date, all that good stuff. We have a compliance report here that will tell you how many have completed it, how many are incomplete, how many are at each risk level, how many are not currently meeting their risk mitigation goals. It will get into your top 10 most risky accounts and from an inherent risk perspective that took the survey, that declined the survey, and then it looks at your residual risk top 10 as well. So you can start to get a sense for who are the riskiest customers that we have. One other thing that I like a lot, and Shane, you and I talked about this, is sometimes it's hard to tell what topic to discuss when it comes to training. We know that we do need to be providing some education and training, but what do we pick? Well, if you have a bunch of commercial customers that come in and take this survey, this report right here is going to highlight the areas where you had the greatest gap. So where are the ones that had the most concern? So now I might want to come in and say, wow, physical access security is a big area of concern. That's something I might want to work on. But again, we'll give you some recommendations to consider there as your commercial customers start completing this. And then finally, we get into the actual questions themselves. And then we will tell you what percentage are answering each of those questions with that particular answer. So this is kind of a global approach where we're looking at the survey campaign overall, but we do also allow you to go inside the accounts as well, where you'll be able to, for one thing, you can get access to the report that they have. So not only does the customer get that report, but you can see it as well on the right-hand side here. You also can see how they answered their standard assessment. You can see what their inherent risk score is and what their residual risk score is. And then we'll be able to kind of start looking at their risk mitigation goals. But one thing we also allow you to do as part of this module is build in required actions. Now, they should really be called suggested actions because we can't, as part of track, require you do anything. But based off of the risk of the commercial customer and how they answered, you can start laying out, these are the actions we want to consider. Based off of this, we want to provide individual training. We want to talk about increasing their fee structure. And we might talk to them about providing a dedicated online banking PC. You know, if they had done a better job on the survey, got a 75 or an 80, maybe it's just provide individual training. Again, it really depends on how you have those recommendations built out in your setup and then how they fare on that survey. But again, our goal with this module is pretty simple. We want to start helping you understand how risky your commercial customers are, because as we've talked about throughout this entire showcase, including all those different pieces where I was not even showing my screen here, commercial customer risk is really critical, and understanding it is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. It's certainly not as easy as it is looking at your own institution. This does require talking to your commercial customers and better understanding them and their environment as well. So this is a module that we do offer. If you're ever interested in taking a closer look or would like to get pricing or anything like that, we'd be happy to discuss it. But if you're not doing something from a risk assessment standpoint, this might be a good option because it not only gets you the information you need, but again, it does take that extra step and start providing some of that education to the customer, which in turn benefits you as well. So with that said, Shane, I'm going to pull my slide deck back up here and we'll start wrapping things up, and I'll take a look and see if we had any questions come in. We already went through but I just want to do some takeaways here. For most financial institutions, obviously commercial customers are critical to both growth and long-term success, but they also represent a lot of risk in some cases, and their risk is your risk, not if your risk. I need to type better. It's important to have a proactive approach to understanding those risks, so those risk assessments are important, but it's also just important to address the risk through training, education, and potentially, Shane, you highlighted this, even some targeted support as well. There's lots of ways to provide training and education. We encourage you to think outside the box and meet your customers where they are. And there is a track module to help as well. So certainly we think this is an important piece of things. I think that data breach report survey quote that I gave right at the top really points out how much of a target small businesses are. And we're happy to provide as much help as we can for you to get your arms around that. Shane, as I'm starting to wrap things up, any additional thoughts or feedback you have? And I'll take a look if any questions came in here as well.
No, I wish I had a tool like this when I was responsible for this compliance part of it. It made my life a lot easier.
Good. So I'm looking in here, and everything was about me not showing my slides, except for this one at the bottom. This one at the bottom that says if somebody declines a survey, can they retake it? There is an option for you to go in and delete their results. So you would have the ability to back up and help them address that further. And there we go. Everybody else, again, on the chat saying, hey, Brett, you're a dummy. You need to show your slides. So I apologize about that again. With that said, really appreciate everybody's time today. I'm happy to stick around for a little bit longer, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one more time for real again. And in this case, I'll put our contact information up. If you have questions for me, for Shane, obviously he's an expert, but I'm happy to help as much as I can, and particularly on the track side. Feel free to reach out if you want a copy of the recording or the slide deck so you can see it in its entirety. Happy to provide that as well. If you don't mind taking a look at that survey here at the end, I do appreciate that. But with that said, Shane, really appreciate your time today. Thanks for jumping on here and giving us all your great expertise, and really appreciate everybody else who jumped on and sat through this today. And we look forward to seeing you at the next Cyber Showcase next month. So thanks again, and we hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks, everyone.